here. Tonight we are going to be making some chicken noodle soup with some cheddar bay biscuits and just kind of a really simple, easy, cozy meal for our snow day. So let's start by whipping up our biscuits and then we will get them kind of baking up and in the oven. So we are going to just make up our box mix. A lot of times I'll make my own sourdough cheddar bay biscuits, but my kids love these, and I decided to grab them when we were at the store because they are a favorite. So the only thing, I make these pretty much exactly the way the box mixes, but I put a little bit more cheese in them than that they recommend. And then I use a little less butter in their butter sauce because they just use a lot of butter. So we've got 2 boxes. We'll put them in there. I also make my biscuits a little bit bigger than theirs. So pretty much the same thing though. I do have my oven preheated to 425. Oh, I'm just knocking everything over here. And then we will get 1.5 cups of cold water in here with our biscuit base mix. Something easy, simple, but perfect for our little night. So I want cold water. So I'm actually going to steal some water from my refrigerator where it's nice and cold out of there because that's the coldest water out of my sink. So I want 1.5 cups. You don't want to add in, you want to mix it in gently, and then we'll add in our grated cheese. I'm going to pour this over, and then we'll toss it with our fork. But before we do that, let's get our cheese grated in. So their recipe always calls for like 1/2 cup of cheddar cheese. I like to use a little bit more, and I like to use freshly grated cheese over like pre-shredded because it melts a little bit nicer in the biscuit. So we're just going to grate, and I'll probably end up with closer to, 1.5 to 2 cups. Almost double what they have in there. Just makes it a little bit better. There. And I'll get that in there. You can also use, I've done it with white cheddar cheese, works really, really well. I was thinking about making my own because I have like my own kind of copycat version that uses sourdough discard, but I didn't have enough discard ready, and it works better with discard than it does with starter. And my starter's all fed up from, I'm like started a new couple loaves of bread. So I was like, oh, we'll do this. We'll pull this out. I always have these just on hand because my kids love them so much. A little bit more. Let's see. Sometimes you never quite know how big your pile is. Couple. There. And now I'm just going to use my fork and try not to over mix your biscuits because again, you want them to be light and fluffy. And if you over mix them, that will make them more dense. And they're a simple drop biscuit, so again, you don't have to do any press and folds with it. Okay, these look like they are just about mixed up. Pretty simple. Let that sit there for just a second. Before we kind of put those on our pan, I'm actually going to take out my chicken here, and then we can let our broth simmer. So earlier, before we kind of started the stream, I got my chicken thighs cooking up. So I just put them in my this is my like Le Creuset soup pot, and I put them in here, covered them with a good amount of water, added some salt, a bay leaf, and some ground black pepper. To kind of season up the base of the broth for it. But chicken thighs are wonderful for making your own base for soups or your own broth because it has got a higher fat content, which gives you more flavor in there. And you want to use skin on because, again, that's going to give you better flavor. Take these guys out. Yep, perfect. And then, since we're going to be shredding this chicken here in a little bit, what I'm going to do to allow it to cool off a little bit faster is we're going to just kind of use our tongs here as best we can and try to pull that skin off. That's going to allow this chicken to cool down a lot faster. That way, in like 10 or so minutes, 10, 15 minutes, I will be able to hand shred this without it being super hot. That skin really acts as an insulator on there. So just pull it off with your tongs. There we go. And it will cool down pretty quickly now. And slide these.
I do have a question. Any snow in Tennessee yet?
Yes, we got quite a bit of snow for Tennessee. I would say we've got here at our house maybe 3 to 4 inches. Just depends where the wind kind of blew. So we got a good amount for it, and we're expected to get some more. Not as much as they originally said, so not the foot of snow, but who knows what overnight will bring us. But the kids' school has already been canceled for Monday and Tuesday, and maybe we'll get a couple more days. Wishful thinking again. But if it stays cold, and who knows what happens tomorrow or tonight while we're sleeping. But we already went outside and we went sledding and, played for a while. It wasn't great compacting snow, so we couldn't really build snowmen with it. It was really dry, powdery snow. But it was still good snow. Snow for sledding. Okay, we're going to shape up our biscuits here. They're going to be a little bit sticky, but I still like to give them a little toss. I'm trying to get them roughly the same size. And this has that sharp cheddar cheese in it. Slide it over here since it keeps making a noise on here. And then we'll get them to bake up in the oven once it's nice and hot. Now, you want to prevent them from being super dense, you want them to stay nice and light and fluffy. Don't push them together. Don't compact them down. Don't overmix your batter. Those are all things that you can take and ruin something that's as simple as a box mix. So just be very gentle with it. There we go. Now, you can also, I think they typically say that you make 10 out of your single box mix, but those make really itty bitty ones, and I like a nice bigger biscuit. And sometimes when I'm making, if I was thinking about doing it, but almost doing a chicken pot pie base, and then getting my little Dutch ovens out and putting this over on top and baking it. But I decided for a little simpler dinner tonight because we had a little hot cocoa bar not too long ago, and lots of sledding. I even did some sledding, which I haven't done in a long time. And I thought Teddy was going to be scared of sledding, but he actually really, really enjoyed it. So it was a lot of fun. He's my more cautious kiddo, but he really, really enjoyed. In fact, he took the sled and he was like, "This one's mine," and it's of course the best sled. We have our toboggans that are the same ones I had as a kid, old school, the shaped wood that they really don't make anymore. And then I got this should have thought a little bit sooner ahead, but I was like, "Oh, we broke our plastic sled last year. I'll order one," and there was only one that was going to get here in time. And so I just bought one, and it's this little husky sled, and it's been a hit. And I was like, I need to get another set. Might need to get more. We'll see. Jack was taking a nap, and then when he woke up from nap, we went out and played outside. he really enjoyed the snow, except he struggled to walk in it. And it was really, really funny. So he was in this cute little red snowsuit. But then, like every third or fourth step, he would just fall right over because the snow was higher than his boots. And he couldn't quite get the like just the walking movement down where he wasn't tripping. But everyone had pretty good time on there. We tried to do we were trying to see how fast we went, so we loaded up 4 of us on the big 7-seater toboggan. I don't know how 7 people could actually sit on that toboggan. It's not that big, but apparently my mom said that me and all of my, my like siblings, my full siblings, all are on that toboggan at one point. Maybe 7 really little. Maybe we're really squeezed in there. But it has like little notches. It's always more of like trying to figure out where you put your legs when you're about to go down the hill, because there's not a lot of room when other people are sitting in front of you. Okay. Let's get these baking up in the oven. Yeah. Well, let me chop up. Let's get our carrots in, and then we'll pop those in the oven because my carrots are the vegetable I want to cook up the longest. We're going to be using rainbow carrots. So I've got yellow, purple, orange, and white in here. And I'm going to get them in our broth base first, and then we'll add in some more on there. But let's see, there it is. I already set it out. But we were, when we're going there. So growing up, we were always like the heaviest, has to go in the back of it. And Evie, my 10-year-old, she goes, no, I want to be in the back of the sled, me and Teddy. And I was like, oh, you guys will just fall off if you're not, because you won't be able to do it. And they're like, no, we're going to try. And what did they do? They fell off when we were going down because there was like nothing for them to hold on to. And I was like, that's why the bigger, the taller people need to be, because they can keep you on the sled and hold you in. But lots of fun, lots of workout, moving. Teddy insisted I pull him back from our neighborhood park the entire way on the toboggan. So he is literally laying just stretched out and has his arms in the snow gliding, and it's going over him as I'm pulling him back. And I'm like, oh, isn't that the life? No work, doesn't have to do anything. Just sit there.
What's in the stock so far?
So far, it is just we cooked up our chicken thighs in there. So we had 8 chicken thighs. We added some salt, black pepper, and a bay leaf, which, as you can see, my bay leaf is poking out of the water there. But that is all. We will add in some fresh herbs here in a little bit, but very just simple. Simplicity works best with a chicken stock. Let the meat kind of flavor it up. And you want to use chicken thighs. You can throw in like a split breast if you want to add in a bit more meat, but you need those thighs. They provide this nice velvety richness to your broth that you can't beat. And this is like the time where I'm like, got to use it. For a lot of other soups, I might like do an oven roasted chicken shredded in there, or you get the pre-shredded chicken. But when I make chicken noodle soup, I do like to make my own broth and base for it, because it does make a huge difference. Okay, we've got our carrots, as you can see. Even though the yellow and the white looked fairly similar before peeling, they do have different colors. Their flavors are all pretty much the same when you get down to it, with the white being the least sweetest and the orange being the most sweet in there. But they all taste like a carrot. I'm going to cube them up, kind of make it so we have nice kind of, carrot confetti in there. Nothing too big. I don't want my chunks of carrots to be so big, but I want to get my carrots in because they're going to be the vegetables that take the longest to cook in here. And then we'll get our other aromatic vegetables in there, our celery and our onions, let them kind of flavor up the rest of our broth base. And I'll also use them for our soup. So a lot of people, if they're going to be making just a broth, they'll probably cook it up with a whole onion or celery, carrot, in there, but I'm going to be adding that in, so I'd rather not waste it and have that part get mushy when I'm already going to be adding that into my soup. But if I was just going to make an extra like stock to have around, then yes, I would throw in carrots and celery and onions for that. But since we're going to be using it all, and I keep it even with that, I keep it simmering because I'm trying to reduce it down to have more and more flavor to it. You could also use a whole chicken if you want to, but shredding a whole chicken is a lot more work than just shredding a bunch of thighs. But the bones, if you're making a stock, a whole chicken does give you really great stock. Okay. So we've got our confetti right here, our rainbow carrots. We'll pop them in there and we'll let them start to simmer, and then we can get our biscuits in the oven. Okay, get this a nice toss. Turn it up, let it simmer. And then our biscuits are going to take about 15 minutes to bake up for this because, they're on a slightly larger size. They take a little bit longer, but not as much longer than you think. So 15 minutes, we'll check on them, see if they need a little bit more, but they should be good. And again, at 425. So put my timer here for 15 minutes. And I'm going to grab some chicken bouillon out of here just in case I want to add some more to the base of our stock if I need it.
Can you go over what's in the biscuits?
The biscuits they're the good old classic. You can't beat them. I do have a copycat sourdough one, but I'm going to have to say nothing beats your classic Red Lobster biscuit.
And could you make dumplings with that biscuit dough?
You know what? I've never tried, but I don't think so. It's a little bit different. I mean, yeah, I've never tried it with it. I have my own dumpling recipe that's a little bit different for it. I think that putting the cheese in it, that might just change up the base of it for it on there. And just the thickness of it. There we go. I'm just going to try to get some of those, like the pepper and some of those spices that are mixed around. Let's get our onions chopped up and our rest of our aromatic veggies in here. Then we're going to put our fresh herbs in there to make a nice herby broth with it. We're keeping it a very simple chicken noodle soup. Sometimes I'll go more bougie. We'll add a lot, more vegetables, but I'm sticking with the classics on here with just carrots, onions, celery. I'll throw in a green onion at the very end, which adds a really great fresh pop. Sometimes if I have leeks, I'll use leeks because I do love leeks in my chicken noodle soup. It adds, again, it's a very aromatic vegetable that adds another flavor note to the soup, as well as a delicious kind of veggie base. But you could also add in, people love to add in like green beans, peas, corn. You can add those in as well if you want. I'm going to do just a smaller dice on it because I don't want to have super huge chunks of onions, and they'll kind of bring their flavors in as they stew up. And this is one of those soups that I kind of do a little bit differently than most of my soups because I'm starting with a stock first versus a lot of times I'm sauteing up my vegetables and then I'm adding the broth base in. This is kind of a reverse option on it, but it gives you a lighter, more, it's just a slightly different, a much lighter broth base. We got that. I'll give this a nice little stir around. So now we've got our onions in here and our carrots. And just make sure you just scrape along the bottom. Make sure you've got nothing sticking down there. And then I'm going to actually, before we get our celery in there, I'm going to put in some of my noodles because they take a bit to run. This is the key to having really delicious chicken noodle soup that you don't have to spend forever making homemade noodles on. So you get these in the freezer section. They are like a home style noodle. So they honestly, they taste just like my homemade noodles, but I don't have to work on them and they don't get soggy in your soup. So I'm going to be putting, this is a 24-ounce bag, which is way too much. I'm going to use about half of it. And I'm going to put them in here, and they need about, I would say 10 minutes to boil up to get complete things, but they don't get like super huge and expand, and they don't get mushy, which is what makes them so wonderful in our soup. So a little bit more to get about halfway. Don't just dump a whole bag in here, because it will suck up all of your liquid and you'll have more of a pasta than a soup. But again, Ream's home style noodles, they're in like the freezer section. So
many
good.
people saying they made chicken noodle soup tonight.
Oh, yeah, that's what I was saying. I said, you know what? With like the snowstorm, it is just like a chicken noodle soup night. That's what I was kind of going through. I was deciding what to make, and I was like, it just feels like chicken noodle soup on here. And I had pretty much all of the ingredients. Thankfully, I had all these ingredients before I went to the store because we really had nothing at the store. I'm gonna get my second onion in here because I always add. I go heavy on my aromatic vegetables because I like those flavors in the broth base, and I love vegetables as well. So we're gonna get this one in here, but I want to get those noodles going. But that's always been, before I found those noodles, I used to make them homemade whenever I had time. But that is like, again, you have to make your pasta dough, roll them out. And although they're a chunkier, thicker noodles that you don't have to like get my pasta machine out, it still takes more time. But I've always found that like throwing in a box of like noodles or egg noodles, they always get, like if you eat it right away, but then if it sits too long, they always get mushy or way too soft. And so that's always been my hesitant about using a box one, is they're just never as nice. But these actually, even the next day, they are not soggy. They really hold up well. Okay, now let's get our celery in here. And then we're going to chop up our herbs, and we'll kind of add an herb base into it. Add some nice, great flavors to it. And then we'll add in a little bit more salt and pepper to flavor, maybe some extra chicken bouillon, depending on how much there. And then we'll shred up our chicken. But that's what I said. My oldest son came down and he was like, "Mama, what are you making for dinner today?" And I was like, "Oh, I'm making chicken noodle soup." And he goes, "Oh, good, because I am just so cold." He's like, "I just haven't been able to warm up some playing outside." He goes, "I wasn't cold when I was outside, but now I'm cold." And I was like, that's the same thing. I wasn't cold when I was outside because we were moving around so much, but now you've just kind of got that Arctic chill going on here. And get our celery diced up. I like to do smaller bits again because I don't like to have a huge chunk of celery, when you're eating it, but more like you can get these little tasty bits with all the other vegetables. And then I leave the leaves on because the leaves also have wonderful fragrant flavors to them and are lovely. No need to waste. And give this a nice stir. And I already can smell it. It smells wonderful. And get our celery in here. Stir it through. Perfect. And now we have pretty much our main vegetable base in our soup already. So we've got our rainbow carrots in here, celery. We have 2 onions in here, so it has just a really good fragrant broth. We cooked up our chicken thighs, so we have a really nice velvety broth in there. You can almost see the natural fat from the chicken on that floating on top, which is going to give you that richness to it. on there. And we'll let that kind of simmer. Let's mince up some of our fresh herbs, which will add a nice herbal note to our thing.
Paula sent you again.
Thank you, Paula. We appreciate that. So I'm going to add in a little bit of minced garlic for it. Not too much, but I find a couple cloves add a nice flavor to it.
And Sue sent you again.
Well, thank you, Sue. Appreciate that. So I'm going to do about, we have a pretty big pot here. So about, I'm going to say this is closer to 4 cloves because these 3 tiny ones count as 1. So we've got some fresh garlic. We're going to use some rosemary, but I'm going to mince it up instead of leaving it on like, the stick or whatnot for it. Some people don't like little bits of herbs throughout, and they'll make like a little bundle and then wrap it in cheesecloth and top it in, or you can use like a tea soup. I love the herbs in it, so I fit there.
Do you have a favorite supermarket?
I really don't. Supermarket. I mean,
I would say your new one.
well, I do love Amazon Fresh because I will say it kind of saved me this snowstorm. I don't know if I want to give up my little secret here. So I will because, I'm all for about sharing. You can't keep things, you can't keep good stuff there. So went out. I realized I had like 1 gallon of milk to make it through. And it was Thursday, which means I was not going to be able to find milk anywhere because once a snowstorm is predicted here, all of the bread, milk, meat, everything disappears. It's like you can't find anything. So I went to the store and lo and behold, there was nothing. And so I got a couple things and I was like, oh, I guess we'll be drinking some chocolate milk because I managed to snag a gallon of chocolate milk. And then I thought, I was going to bed at night and I was like, you know what? I wonder if Amazon Fresh would have it because a lot of times I'll use Amazon Fresh because, you can just like order it online and we live near a big city, so it delivers for us. And I said, nobody can panic buy Amazon Fresh because you got to do a lot of thought in that panic buying. It's not like just stopping at your neighborhood store. Nobody's rushing to their computer to buy their milk, and eggs and stuff like that. So I went on there and sure enough, I got my milk, I got my eggs, I got everything that I needed, had everything. And I had it delivered the next day. And I was like, I didn't even have to go to the store. And I had that on Friday. I had it delivered Friday, the day where there was nothing left for anywhere. And I was pretty proud of myself. I was really proud of myself. I was like, look at me. Not that I did anything, but I saved it. I had my hot cocoa today because I was telling our kids, I said, nobody's allowed to drink milk unless they've run it by me because I had 1 gallon of it. I said, I got to make sure the little boys have their milk. I said, you have every drop has to be accounted for. And now I'm like, oh, you guys, I forgot something. I'm like, no, milk restrictions are lifted. Go ahead, make your smoothies. Okay, let's get this a nice stir. But I will say, I've been loving Amazon Fresh on there. You can get most everything there, but I think the thing that I really also love about it is it's got really great prices, like cheap. But the quality is there. You actually get a lot of like Whole Food stuff. So that's kind of nice. Okay, I've got my fresh thyme, my garlic, and my rosemary. And we're going to mince this up. I'm just going to kind of mince it all up together. And then we'll add this into our broth and that will kind of infuse it. If again, you don't love the like little bits of herbs, just put all of this in either a little cheesecloth or a tea stopper, like one of those little tea balls, and you can pop it in your soup. Here we go. Taking those little twigs out. And then I'm going to just get them nice and fine. That way they'll infuse their flavors the most into our broth. And they'll be nice and herbally. And then we've got to start shredding our chicken. And we've got to make our little herby butter to brush over our biscuits. And we'll mince up or slice up our green onions out at the end because I will say green onions, but this is really like a spring onion. It's halfway to a leek. It's giant. So we'll add that in there. It's really funny because, I cook all the food for my parents. I feel like they're going to be so jealous. We're going to be eating our chicken noodle soup over here. This is one of their favorite meals I make. They just, they love the classics. So I'm probably going to definitely take a staged picture of me eating it and showing them, oh, we're so toasty and warm over here. Okay, this looks fairly good. So we've got our herb base kind of minced up, our garlic, thyme, and rosemary. We're going to pop this over here in our nice rolling boil. I'm going to turn this down now just a smidge. There we go.
And what brand noodles do you use?
So these are the Reams frozen home style egg noodles. Love them, love them, love them. I just found them one time a long time ago, and they are just as good as homemade. Like they truly are. I used to make homemade, and occasionally, if I have extra pasta dough, I still make homemade after it. But they, you find them in the freezer section, you pop them in there, and they have just this really. They hold up well. They're a nice sturdy noodle that doesn't get soggy, and they just give you that old school feeling to them. Okay, let me get a little spoon here. Taste our broth. Perfect. I don't even think we need to add any chicken bouillon. It's perfect as it is. Okay, let that simmer there, and we can start shredding our chicken here. So we removed our chicken thigh or our skins from our thighs. That way they will be nice and cool. So I should be able to shred these in no time. Just gonna pull them all off. And we don't keep the skins will all come off, but they're really important when you do make that stock part that you leave those on because that's going to add a great amount of flavor. Okay. Well, good thing I didn't get full hands into shredding yet because our biscuits are done. So let's go grab those out. Then we can make our herby butter to brush over them. And we can finish up our noodle soup, which will be almost done. Such an easy but classic that can get done pretty quickly. Oh, perfect. Look at our gorgeous biscuits here. Wonderful. All those beautiful, how much they puff up and they're just amazing. That's why I'm always saying, I said, be careful when you're shaping them. You don't want to over shape them or push them in. You want to leave them nice and loosely clumped together for this. Now we're going to make our herby little butter that will brush over it. Now, I will say the one thing that they say on the back of the box is they say to use a half a stick of butter per box, which would mean a whole stick of butter. That is way too much butter. I use just a half a stick of butter, so I cut it in half, and it's more than enough. And then I still use both herb packages, but you can do half that, and you'll still have enough butter to brush over each one, more than enough. So don't waste your precious butter, especially if you had to fight tooth and nail to get it at the store, because that was one of the items that was also sold out.
You have a question. What protein would you make with scalloped potatoes?
Ooh, well, I feel like you could do a lot of proteins. You could do a roast chicken, like a full chicken. A pot roast would be a nice if you were to do just like not one with the potatoes, but an actual like oven roast pot roast would be well. But I would probably with scalloped potatoes do like an actual oven roast protein with it. I feel like that, or actually pork chops. Pork chops with scalloped potatoes would go really well. I love scalloped potatoes, and I feel like my love for scalloped potatoes was born from like the 80s and 90s scalloped potatoes, which were from a box. I just distinctly remember them being dumped out of a box as a kid and boom poured there. So we've got our herb into our herby base, into our butter, and once it melts, we will brush it over the top of our biscuits for it. But we'll let that simmer for just a second here on there. Let's get our chicken shredded here. I'm just going to kind of reach in, grab our bones out, and then we'll just kind of have our discard pile here. And then I can just shred it straight into the soup. You don't even need to make a second pile here for it. The nice thing is thighs are really easy to shred on there. Also, thighs are dark meat, which means they're a bit hardier. So a lot of times I'll add in a split breast or two just to bulk up the meat portion of it for it. But the one thing with breast meat is it falls apart more in your chicken noodle soup. So thigh meat really does keep its form and shape better as well. So it doesn't get as stringy. There we go. And just kind of pull it back in here. And then just pull off any bits of cartilage, but just go right into your soup with those nice pieces of chunks of it. And pretty easy. It looks like our butter here. I'm going to give my hands a quick rinse because our butter looks like it's just about ready. Doesn't take much for it to sit there. Nice little swirl. I'm going to give this a nice stir, and then I'll brush it in just a second right before we're ready to serve on there. So we'll keep it on there to keep that butter nice and hot for it. But we're almost done with everything, so we'll finish up nice and quickly. So pull again. Pull that out, throw that in there. And this was, it was one of those value pack of chicken thighs, which was about 4 pounds of chicken. But by the time you get, the bone and you account for it, like that, it's going to be probably closer to like 2.5 to 3 pounds of actual meat when you remove everything. So even though it was like 8 thighs, it's still a good amount.
Yeah, question: did you get to go sledding today?
I did get to go sledding. It was a lot of fun. The weather, we bundled up. We had got into our gear. Like I said, I've just kept our gear throughout the years. So they're kind of each kid wears the previous kid's years. And so we were all like decked out into it. And it was wonderful. It was nice. And we kept nice and toasty warm. And it was a lot of fun. Teddy, I wasn't sure how he was gonna, because this is the first time he actually went sledding, um, and he really, really enjoyed it. He actually he's my little cautious boy, so I thought he would be scared and then would just kind of like play in the snow there. Nope. He commandeered one of the sleds and he was like, "This is my sled and I am not sharing it." And I was like, "You got to share it." He's like, "Well, I'll share it with people, but I still get it." Okay. You give my hands a quick rinse. And we'll toss up our chicken noodle soup. Look at those beautiful noodles in there. Lovely.
Oh, will you be adding any more stock to it?
No, I like it to be a little bit more hearty and full of vegetables and protein. I actually reduce my stock down as much as I can so that it's a richer, kind of stronger flavor base to it instead of a super like brothy based for it. Because I tell you, half the people in my family eat their soup with a fork, and it's a very strange phenomenon. That I think is they learned from their father's side. But no, I keep it like just a nice kind of not as brothy, but a heartier, but you still have that light.
Is there any secret to preventing the noodles from soaking up all the broth?
So yes, and the secret is I buy these noodles that are called reams from the freezer section. So they're not box noodles. I actually have their pack right here. And they're frozen and they're home style. And they're the best. They honestly, That was always my biggest complaint when I didn't make homemade noodles, was them getting soggy. These noodles do not get soggy. They hold their base, they hold their form. They don't just like absorb everything. They soak up enough to make them soft for there, but they're not full, like they don't get like regular box noodles. So that is my things. And I have been able to find them in several grocery stores and at Target in the freezer section. They're like in where they keep like the dumplings and the other frozen pasta. Okay, there we go. Look at that. Perfect. Okay, we'll top off with our green onion here. You can also use some chives, but this is like the last little bit that I find adds a great bit of flavor at the very end. And you want to add it right before serving because that's what's going to really make it nice and fresh, that fresh onion flavor. So it just brightens up your classic a little bit more. And then I'll grab my ladle out.
Can you go over what's in the soup?
Yes. So this is my kind of classic chicken noodle soup. We made our stock with our chicken thighs. Then we added in onions, rainbow carrots, celery. We have some lovely spices, rosemary, thyme, and garlic, and then green onions. And then we have our reams, frozen egg noodles. These are the home style ones. And then we added our shredded chicken thighs back in here. And then our stock is flavored with just salt, bay leaf, and black pepper, which is what we did when we cooked up the thighs. Well, guys, since our biscuits are still warm, ready, and our soup is done, let's get ready to think. But I'm going to just try one more taste, make sure it's all on par. Perfect. Really, really good. I'm going to turn that off and let me get ready to serve up, guys. So good.
Would these noodles work well for a beef stroganoff?
No, not really. Because a beef stroganoff is a dish that you serve over a bed of noodles. Now they work really well in like a beef and noodle soup, but these are not noodles that you like boil up really on their own. They're great in soups. But with a stroganoff, you really kind of want to use more of like an egg noodle for that. Well, thank you, Mary. We appreciate that. Get our bowl here and ready to serve up. Okay, this is our gorgeous homemade chicken noodle soup with our rich broth that we made by cooking up some chicken thighs with the skin on. We added pepper and salt and a bay leaf to the base when we were cooking the chicken thighs. Then we removed the chicken thighs, added in carrots, celery, onions, and fresh garlic, rosemary, thyme, our frozen Reams noodles, and then our shredded chicken back in there for this wonderful and delicious chicken noodle soup, which is perfect for the snowy weather today. And then, of course, with our chicken noodle soup, we've got our Cheddar Bay biscuit with some sharp cheddar cheese, freshly grated in and brushed with the herby butter on top for a perfect cozy dinner tonight as we settle into for some more snow. Well, guys, thank you so much for joining us here. Don't forget to like and subscribe. I try to do live cooking shows every single day, kind of show you what we're making for our family and hopefully teach you guys something along the way. Again, we do upload all of our videos to the link on our page. So if you ever want to recreate anything again, like our chicken noodle soup, you can always go to our page and search for what we made and watch it again. We also have a link to our Amazon storefront that has all of our cooking gear and gadgets in it. I've got my Dutch ovens, my bakeware, knives, cutting boards, so all the different things that I use in the kitchen for you guys to check out. But again, thank you so much for joining us here. Don't forget